Hi guys and welcome back. My name is Michael O'Rourke, Level 2 USAC Certified Cycling Coach, AFA Certified Personal Trainer, and co-owner, co-operator of Proactive Personal Training and Fitness Education here in Auburn, California. This is a third in a three-part series where I'm going to continue a comparison of FTP based training with training based on metabolic assessment. Now in the last segment we discussed FTP and CP, or critical power. To better understand training based on metabolic assessment and how it compares with that of FTP, I'm going to introduce a third term, MLSS. MLSS is an acronym for Maximal Lactate Steady State. Sustainable lactate concentration, just like sustainable power, can reach various levels according to the duration of intensity and effort. MLS can be comparable with FTP, but with some exception. And that's because lactate requires a little bit of time to reach anything like a steady state. It's no accident that ramp tests for lactate or VO2 assessment use steps ranging in 3 minutes to 5 minutes. And that's because the energy responsible for the first 60 to 90 seconds of each step increase or increase in power tend to come from the anaerobic system, with a little bit of time required for the aerobic engine to catch up. And since 3 to 5 minutes is required to reach any kind of steady state, MLSS, in my opinion, is not a real viable metric for efforts below 5 minutes. Now, differences in power, as we established, are much greater in the short efforts than in the long efforts. And the longer efforts are of particular interest when it comes to FTP and long-term sustainable power, as well as determining training zones. Now, here the difference between 20 and 60-minute power is 5%. And that falls within range of the 20-minute field test we talked about. But if we look at lactate measurement, we find a completely different story. The difference between those same two metrics is 62%. Now, we'll cover lactate, lactate shuttle, and glycolytic flux in another segment. But for now, and the simplicity of argument, more lactate means more anaerobic glycolysis. And here, this writer's anaerobic glycolytic contribution is far greater over 20 minutes than he's likely going to sustain over 60 minutes, far more than that 5%. This reinforces my point earlier that power alone is only part of the story, especially over shorter durations. Power will tell you about the force produced, but not how the force was produced. In addition, with the exception of time trialing, cycling is not an FTP contest. You know, whether it's a spirited group ride, an actual road race, or a criterium, when the separations occur, they tend to occur at power outputs well above FTP. And once they do, you're not very likely to FTP your way back to the group. It could be argued, actually, that glycolytic capacity and glycolytic flux can be greater predictors of race performance than FTP. Now, FTP can still function as a base for training and performance, but there are many different ways to improve your threshold beyond FTP-based training that are, in my opinion, more effective. And just to drive the point home, here's a screenshot of a different athlete, different threshold. On top, you'll see training zones calculated from FTP. On the bottom, you'll see training zones derived from metabolic assessment. And what I want to call attention to is the greatest difference. The power band associated with maximal oxygen utilization as calculated from FTP is very different than the power band associated with maximal oxygen uptake from an actual metabolic assessment. Now, this might be a good place to talk about balance. And that's because your body is always seeking balance, whether it's balance in stance, balance in motion, balance in temperature, and yes, balance in metabolic function. See, the athlete is perpetually throwing their metabolism out of balance and then asking it to regain balance or put up with the imbalance. To me, MLSS kind of represents that conflict or conflict resolution. Your metabolism can find different kinds of balance for different durations with analogous sets of costs and benefits. And not to keep banging on the poor little 20-minute field test, but when you consider some of the many variables we've already mentioned, FTP-based training is something of a blunt instrument in my opinion. Good metabolic assessment yields greater understanding of the physiology behind your training and thus more effective and efficient training. Now, if you think you're ready to take it to the next level, or maybe you just want to maximize your training time, then you may want to consider making the investment in a metabolic assessment. And if you do so wisely. VO2 assessments are great. There's a lot of terrific information to be gleaned from them. Just be advised that they tend to be on the spendy side, and as a side note, they're pretty uncomfortable. If you go with a lactate assessment, those are great too, but be advised that not all lactate tests are created equal. There's a lot more to it than a simple ramp test to find your power at 4 millimoles or a lactate turn point. Now, thanks to years of research done at the German Sports University in Cologne by Sebastian Weber, there's now a test protocol and software available that gives us all the same information as a VO2 assessment. And here at Proactive Personal Training, we're pleased to have access and association to this system called Inside. For more information on endurance training, whether it be cycling, running, whatever, on metabolic assessment, any questions on the slide presentation or others, please feel free to contact me at the website you see below. And look for more videos coming up. And until next time.